Talk Shoes. Recorded live.
Hello and welcome to Castle of Horror, the show dedicated to horror movies and awesomeness. This week, we take a moment to remember a beloved actress, Yvonne Craig, who died recently at the age of 78. People remember Yvonne Craig as Batgirl, and for me, she's always the love interest in Ski Party, which is a fine, fine film featuring James Brown as Ski Patrol. But she also stands out as maybe the one and only bright spot in tonight's movie, which I'm very excited to discuss. The 1967 opus, Mars Needs Women. Bear in mind, if you haven't seen today's movie, we're going to be talking about it from the perspective of horror fans who have seen it. So, warning, spoilers ahead. From Denver, Colorado, I'm your host, Jason Henderson, creator of the Alex Van Helsing novels. With me from Austin is Tony Salvaggio, lead singer of the band Deserts of Mars and co-creator of the comics Psychon from Tokyo Pop and Clockworks from Humanoids. Say hello, Tony.
Howdy.
Howdy. And from Los Angeles, although I think tonight you are also in Austin. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay.
On location. I was on location. He's in Texas.
In Dallas.
Yes.
Posing as Houston.
It's a film actually filmed entirely in Texas, pretending to be Houston, but filmed in Dallas. So you can pretend to be in Los Angeles, but you're actually in Austin.
No, he needs to pretend to be in Houston also because he's on location.
In Austin, which is pretending to be Houston. Adam Foshko, screenwriter for the new Skylanders, Superchargers, story consultant for Destiny, The Taken King, and writer and creative producer for Call of Duty, Advanced Warfare, Exo Zombies. That's a lot of colons, my friend. Say hello.
Wait, thank you. To quote Frank Zappa, Manx needs women.
Manx needs women. And finally, also in Denver, as always, color commentary from attorney Julia Guzman. Say hello.
Howdy.
Howdy. Okay. According to Wikipedia, according to you guys, I have a lot to answer for here. But according to Wikipedia, Mars Needs Women is a 1967 American science fiction film independently made by Azalea Pictures, produced, written, and directed by self-proclaimed schlock artist auteur Larry Buchanan, and stars Tommy Kirk, he's a big Disney guy, Yvonne Craig, that's Batman's Batgirl, and Byron Lord. The film was syndicated directly to television. This is interesting. This movie actually somehow failed to find theatrical release. American Pictures.
Shocking.
People remember this movie fondly, and yet they may not remember that it never actually came out in the theaters. It went straight to TV. So I hate to disappoint you because you may feel, I don't know why I wasted my time on this if it wasn't actually a theatrical release. But I feel like, we should be larger than these labels. So yes, American International Pictures. So let's get our opening thoughts. Let's go Adam, Tony, Julia, and then if I have anything to say in my own defense, I'll go. So Adam, take it away.
Oh my God, there's not enough beer in the world. So, apart from this being the Castle of Horror, and this, I can't even call it a picture. This movie, loosely, I'm calling it a movie. This television released piece of goodness with possibly the worst special effects. I won't even call them special. I'll call them just effects. They're special.
They're
special.
Super special.
Yeah. Look. We've, as I think I said even before we started rolling, collectively we have probably seen, easily thousands of hours of great movies, of awesome pictures, of mediocre fare, of clear genre stuff, dipping down into just pure claptrap. And, I'll tell you, this is, first of all, this is sort of sci-fi-ish, and it's sort of an offbeat thing. I now understand why we've been given this assignment while we did not choose to walk away from it. We embraced it wholeheartedly. And it's shockingly awful. I think the thing I love about it is the fact that everyone's taking it so incredibly seriously, and they're giving it their best effort. But I think the problem is nobody told them, particularly the director, that it was going to be a terrible movie. And they're making so much of it. They're taking it so seriously, and it's hard to sit through. I've never seen a movie where there's been at least 20 or 30 minutes of really deeply studying a megaphone, while unfiltered voiceover is going across where I can't tell who's talking, and an equal amount probably of flight footage from an X-19 or something, and it's just awful. The one thing I will say, the one bright spot really is there's one speech, I suppose, in a planetarium, and I'm like, okay, you know what, that's interesting, and I'm sure I've seen pieces of this movie off and on over the years, but I finally sat down. I think this is one of those movies that you hear about, and you certainly have heard about. If you listen to Pump Up the Volume, you've heard Mars Needs Women. And you're probably there's some pop culture shared consciousness that sort of takes us back to this. So I think we've seen the trailer a million times, or we've seen pieces of it a million times, but actually to sit down and to watch this. I had this movie on, and I just painted my deck, and I was watching paint dry, and I was watching this movie, and I was really unsure which one would keep my attention more.
Amazing.
And I lost really on all counts. I'm not a fan of this movie. I wish that I'm speechless, as you could tell, which is unimaginable. But I'm going to leave my opening thoughts there because I can really go on for about in fact, I could cut in pictures of a megaphone while I'm talking to cover this. But I was stunned by this.
That'll be your endorsements. Megaphone.
Yeah. Megaphone. The Amtrak Megaphone Corporation. Yeah, it was. I'm not a fan of this. I'm amazed it got made. I think I'm glad I finally saw it. But wow. So please, somebody rescue me.
All right. Okay. Let's go to Tony. Tony, do you have anything to add to that in your opening thoughts?
No. So I had seen this before, and I'd forgotten it, and I think I've forgotten it. I watched it again last night, and I think I've forgotten it again because that's how it is. It's amazing because it sounds like it's going to be schlocky, sci-fi of the kind of beach blanket kind of like. Hey, yeah. It's just really an excuse to see chicks in a movie and we're going to go and that'll be a thing. But other than the kind of stripper girl, it's not really even that. It sounds like it could be a Skinamax movie, but it's not that either. So if you were expecting any of that, even of the 60s variety, it's not that. There's not a lot of good sci-fi in it. There is a lot of stock footage. I was saying before, it reminded me of, and I've only seen it on MST, Red Zone Cuba, which is, the non-sci-fi version of this, where it's a lot of boring dialogue and a lot of stock footage. Like a whole lot. More than there probably should be. Although I will agree with Adam that the planetarium speech was pretty cool because you're like, hey, well, there's the sci-fi and the Martians, this is their moment to explain themselves, and the kids love it in the movie. But man, oh man, is it just boring, and it doesn't loop around to like it can be schlocky and still be enjoyable, but this thing just firmly sits right in the trough of like, yeah, that's why I don't watch this that often. This is truly just it's unwatchable just because it's very soporific. Like, I know now if I can't sleep, I wish it was on like a streaming service I didn't have to pay. Because then I'd just be like, oh, here's my white noise generator right here. Oh, and look, he's talking. And that's it, I'm out. Mars needs women, Tony needs sleep. It's time to do this. That would be amazing.
All right. Julia, rescue us. Is there
Yes,
is there
I
anything-
would
can
be
you
happy
talk
to do
us
that. But
down?
first, I have a question first before I tell you my thoughts, and that is, does this actually qualify as horror?
I mean,
Horrible?
well, look,
I'm feeling horrible. I mean, we've done some sci-fi. Like, I guess it's horrific that they've taken the women. Hey,
Yeah.
Martian. Oh, and by the way, Martian.
But is it? But wait,
Don't take
wait
all
a
the
second.
smart women.
Doesn't
Come
horror? Doesn't horror also? I mean, doesn't it? Well, I think there's several things, right? There's a measure often in horror. There's a measure of suspense.
Sure.
There's a measure of there's active themes at work, and actually in most horror pictures, things happen, and by that I mean it has a beginning, middle, and end. The people at the end of it are never the same as they are in the beginning because there's been a slasher, or there's been a creature, or there's been a zombie resurrection. There's any number of things. I mean, within the whole spectrum of horror, whatever it is, there are themes at work. Even if the story isn't particularly good, you go, okay, I get it. But this is one of the few movies where really nothing happens, because even at the end, nothing has happened.
Well, okay,
No,
I
but
disagree
you
with
were
I disagree with you there, because
it's
they
meta.
did have the weird transporter accident with the 3 women at the beginning, so they did have those women that they were killed.
Although you're making more of it now than they actually made of it in the film. But I think I think Julia's question could be rephrased as: is Mars Needs Women an appropriate target or an appropriate discussion for a podcast called The Castle of Horror?
Right, and so I hear you saying it is horrific and horrible, and so therefore yes. So I will give you my comments. I think I watched this movie. You guys mentioned Mystery Science Theater 3000. I watched the movie as if it were an MST and I was one of the robots. And so I actually enjoyed it terribly because I made jokes a lot to myself that were hilarious to me. And Jason even laughed at a couple of them. At one point he actually said, I actually laughed at that.
That's the measure of humor in the household.
Yes.
Well, I like how very studious that sounds. I actually laughed at that. You get a cookie. You can be funny sometimes. Way to go.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. That's how it goes around here. Because most of the time the jokes are met with, and by the way, my oldest daughter, Sophia, has completely taken this trait on. Most of the time my jokes are met with,
as it is. Well,
and Sophia is now doing that too, and I'm like, yep. Anyway, so there was a couple of things I liked about it. Number one was the Air Force promotion in the middle of the movie, where it suddenly becomes you too can fly awesome planes in the Air Force. It's like 5 minutes of Air Force, like you were saying, stock footage. But I really think that that's why it was in there, is because the Air Force they said, hey, can we use any of your stock footage? And they went, heck yeah, put in as much as you want, because it makes people want to come fly with us and be awesome. So that
and they're
was
like,
that was.
oh man, this movie's going to be so much cheaper now. Thank you, Air Force.
Yes, exactly.
We can actually get this on TV.
Exactly. And then I grew up, and my parents still live like 5 minutes from the Johnson Space Center. So the whole thing of like the what did they call it? What did they call it? Let me see. The United States Decoding Service NASA wing.
Oh boy, yeah.
So I was like, I love that.
Those guys.
I was like, okay, first of all, I don't think that exists, and second of all, it sure as heck doesn't look anything like this. And then Jason, of course, who spent a lot of years in Dallas, is like, no, that's Richardson. That's a pumpkin.
And the other thing is, I mean, while we're on things that don't exist, I just want to go on about, I don't know, space genetics for a second.
Yeah.
All of that was great. I think
this is sometime in the future, though.
Genetics.
Okay.
Someone's got a PhD in space genetics. All right, go on.
Well, the last thing I want to say is that I'm excited to talk about theories of how it is that the people on Mars are exactly the same as people on Earth. My theory being that Mars people came first and then there was a colony of them that created the Earth people. That's what I think. But anyway, so let's go ahead and talk whatever, Jason, you wanted to do your comments.
So you raised a valid point that this movie actually, if it were a different movie from what it was, raises a lot of really peculiar questions that probably would make an interesting film. That this one is not necessarily, but I have to say this. Look, this movie is 90 minutes long, and I really enjoyed watching it. Reason being, though, and it's probably true you got it, this has to be the case. So I'm from Dallas. So this thing is filmed on location, meaning they had no money to build anything. It's filmed on location in so many different amazing spots around Dallas in 1966. So you get to see, like, what the strip clubs on Lower Greenville looked like in 66, you know, what Fair Park, actually, they use Fair Park for everything. They use Fair Park.
Every time they show Fair Park, they go, Fair Park.
Fair Park, yes. Because, you know, Fair Park has neighborhoods. It has a planetarium with big columns in front. It has, you know, there's like the thing where they go walking around the exhibit, the genetics exhibit, which that's also in Fair Park. So, you know, Fair Park actually has all of this stuff, and so that's all very interesting. And, you know, and they're in an actual, I like seeing the hotel. I liked hearing all the Texas accents. So to me, this was a curio in the same way that, like, The Terror is, where you watch the movie. The Terror makes less sense than this. I maybe like The Terror more than this, but The Terror you just watch because you're sort of enjoying just the goofiness of watching Jack Nicholson wander around a set a lot. This is kind of like that. But, you know, let's see. To answer the other question, so I brought you to this because I thought it would be a nice way to tip our hats at Yvonne Craig. But also, to answer your question, you know, is it appropriate for us to watch a science fiction film other than, like, horror science fiction films like, you know, Galaxy of Terror or whatever?
Galaxy of Terror, yeah.
Yeah, you know, I kind of feel like I feel that Castle of Horror is something that can be really anything in the world of genre fiction. Anything. You know, I to me, you know, we can throw it open to thrillers, we can throw it open to anything that could have been a subject on the old radio show, you know, The Inner Sanctum. I think we're fine.
So it's
anything
genre,
that Ray Bradbury could have written about.
So genre will work as well.
Yeah. Now, I will say also that if this movie had been made by somebody a little schlockier, like Russ Meyer, you know, if this had been made as like a way sexier film, that could have been really good. But considering it's not that way, I way prefer Mars Needs Women, genuinely, over a movie like Attack of the Killer Tomatoes, which is from a similar period. It was like a few years later. But
it was a good deal later.
Was it? Well, I thought it was in the
Yes.
Was it? Well, okay, I don't remember the year for Attack of the Killer Tomatoes. But
go on.
But my point is, Attack of the Killer Tomatoes is played for laughs, and it's a big skit and stuff like that. I got nothing against comedy, but I like the fact that this movie is still trying to make a primary text for other, you know, for people to go and watch.
Killer Tomatoes was 10 years later.
Okay.
So, but I'm with you. That one is definitely played for laughs. What about Killer Clowns from Outer Space? How would you? Again, we're talking about one joke. I mean, these are one joke movies that are played out.
Yes.
You know, Attack of the Killer Tomatoes, Mars Needs Women. Not so much. This is again a serious. This is being played off as serious, and they do an admirable job. And by the way, you know, they do a remarkably good job. Yvonne Craig does a remarkably good job playing her role. And Tommy Kirk, again, I mean, I think he even rewrote a bunch of his own dialogue. Remarkably good. So, I mean, it sounds like, if I'm hearing you correctly, you know, this is a movie that should actually be, first of all, belongs in here because it's in that milieu of sci-fi, and it seems to work well within Castle of Horror. But really, it's because it's almost like we're not just tipping our hat to Yvonne Craig, but, you know, a lot of inventiveness obviously had to go in to make this 90-minute movie. And I will say that, you know, you can say when you look at The Terror, which we've all seen and all forgotten and seen again and forgotten, and no one knows what the thing is about, for crying out loud. It was done on sets that were left over, and they had several days, and they had Karloff and they had Nicholson. They put on a thing and walk, and we'll just run the camera, and that's fine. But you expected that. You expect a lot of that from, you know, from all of those, you know, all those types of movies, you know, from Avco. But this is, you know, I have to say, if there is something that shook out of it, it's probably bigger than itself, right? It's the fact that this movie was made for $1.99. It wasn't nearly as horrible as Plan 9 from Outer Space, which, by the way, I saw not too long ago, thanks to our friends at Rift Tracks, who did a live version of it. And I had never seen the whole damn thing, and it's outrageous. And the only way to get through it without an aneurysm is to have a Rift Tracks thing going on.
That's true.
But this is done in earnest in a lot of ways, and it's not nearly as bad as that. It's not a good movie at all. But because they've used every possible standing location in Dallas, and they've put used to newspapers in people's hands, and they've tried to make it all work, and they have and they actually do tell it from the perspective of the aliens who are there, sort of by and large. There was a lot of alien time with Doc and whatever else. It's they're doing their student film version of The Day the Earth Stood Still without the giant robot or really the flying saucer to speak of, and a lot of troops and I don't know, Michael Rainey and a real solid story with an outcome. But you know what? The damn thing got made. And it still exists today. So, I have to salute anybody who gets a movie made, and people are still talking about it, since 1967. And I think probably the thing that saved it was the fact that it didn't get theatrical release. The fact that it went to television, it probably went on rotation there, and people were so hammered in the 60s and 70s that this is the thing that was on. I think that's, it was just one of those things that just sort of it allowed it to escape into the public consciousness.
Well, plus it does have an iconic name. The name, you're like, oh, I hope that I'm in for something good. But sadly, not so much.
Yeah, it's a little misleading because of that. And maybe this is where, when you take the Julian Temple picture, which was, I guess, maybe somehow influenced slightly, at least in terms of the title, Earth Girls Are Easy.
Yeah.
It seems like it kind of harkens to this thing in some way, but a much, much, much better and more enjoyable and a different kind of movie altogether.
Earth Girls Are Easy is a wonderful comedy. I mean, I was bitching about movies like Killer Tomatoes, which I feel like are really, look, there may be people who love Killer Tomatoes, but I kind of feel like it's a kind of a lazy skit and a little too winky. But that movie, Earth Girls Are Easy, is very clever. I mean, that's a clever movie and an expensive movie. I mean, that's like a big Hollywood.
Yeah, it's a studio movie.
Now, here's my question though about this, and for the listener who's managed to get this far into this show, but they haven't actually seen this film. So the movie is about.
What?
You can't spoil this movie. It's not possible.
The movie is about the aliens of Mars. I mean, I guess the inhabitants of Mars have run out of women because they have the same DNA apparently as humans. They're just like humans, but they have a problem. They have an atmospheric problem that has caused their Y chromosome, which is basically a chromosomal disorder such that women are disappearing. There's like 1 in 10 of the Martians is a female. They need women, and so they have started
1 in
by
100
kidnapping.
now.
Right. Oh, okay. And they started by kidnapping Earth women.
Because Mars is a sausage fest is not nearly as good of a title. Not nearly as iconic. If it had been called that, it definitely wouldn't be where it is.
Because you know what that picture would be, right? You know what that movie would be, right? You know where you're headed with it.
Yes,
absolutely.
You know.
Yeah.
There'd be like Roman Colosseums, and they're.
No. It clearly the movie would be called Uranus Needs Sausage.
Oh my God.
I can't believe I said that.
That's the reaction that I get when I make jokes.
No, but sometimes,
here's my
Julia, sometimes Jason does say that was funny, so, get that going for you.
It was the one time. No, I'm kidding.
Mars needs women. The the thing of it is, Mars Needs Women is a tacky, stupid title, right? It is a goofy title. It sounds like a joke. And I always have great appreciation for people who decide, you know what, I'm going to come up with a concept that sounds like a joke and then see if we can play it straight. And sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. That's very clever. But do you think that sort of dooms it? Do you think that it would have been wiser for them to call this, you know, I don't even know, the chromosomal invasion or something like some sort of?
I think it's a fine title because the title is the message, and the message they were making a very simple. The Martians were sending a very simple message, saying we're going to come see you, Mars Needs Women. Now here's the thing: what I don't understand is why they had to have this encoded, complicated message that they had to decode when they could just speak English over apparently an intercom whenever they want to. So that part I was a little unclear on.
Well,
but given that the message is Mars Needs Women, I think it's a good title.
Well, maybe that was thrown a while back, and then they just bought Rosetta Stone English and taught themselves on the way here.
Yes.
Or there's a universal translator and nobody bothers to
your thought?
Listen, I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with the title. I mean, I think this is not the problem.
I think it's great.
I think you could have had the idea that, it's not even that far off. We'd say, look, the idea is, Mars needs women because there are too many, you know, men there, and they're the dying race. And listen, you know what? And at some point we'll talk about the speech that I think was at least partly written by Tommy Kirk. But
I want to go to the speech right after this.
But wait a second. Yeah, okay, but which is actually kind of poignant.
Yes.
But the story that's surrounding it could have been so much better. You really could have, you know, instead of it fails at the onset when they land, or it's not even the landing. It's when the guys from the so-called, you know, NASA division, you know, get the signal, and then the Martians say they want to talk, and then, you know, Doc shows up, and he pretty much just says, hey, we need women, and we're going to take them, and I'll disappear if you come near me, and there's pretty much nothing that happens. They pretty much say no, we say no, and they say, well, we're going to do it anyway, and then they leave. It isn't a thing where, you know, like so many, you know, Japanese monster movies or something else where aliens come and you know, and there's a threat of annihilation unless, you know, women are surrendered to Mars, and then we figure out some way to, you know, keep this from happening. I mean, this, you know, it could have been undertaken in a completely different way. I don't know if it could have been shot, you know, as cheaply, but, you know, I think there were giant problems with the undertaking of the story. I don't think it was the title. I don't think it was the fact that, listen, at its heart, you had an alien who comes to Earth on a mission, and that mission is to do a thing. He falls in love with one of the women he's supposed to abduct, and at some point makes a choice and decides against his race. You know what? Yeah. That is not a new story, but that is the thread of a story that could actually work and pay off. But the problem is it's doomed from the beginning in the way that it's set up, and then how the story is prosecuted from then on doesn't deliver. It's got a cheap sort of tawdry title if you look at it one way, and you could have gone the Russ Meyer route. But I would much rather have seen a story that made more of, you know, if they wanted to make their own version of Day the Earth Stood Still, which had its own message, an anti-war message, an anti-atomic age message, or an anti-nuclear proliferation message. And if this had some kind of a message, whether it was, you know, they had made mistakes before, and because of it, the race had ended in a situation where it was going to be extinct, and therefore they were having to resort to this. I mean, whatever its message is. If they had just undertaken
it, the message is that you shouldn't take your women for granted. That's what I think it is.
And that may be, but I think there was an opportunity to make more of it, and I think that would have served this movie better. And I think it could have been done in a way that, you know, it had less to do. This is one of those times I think it's less about money, and I think it was more about what they expected this movie to be. I don't want to say talent, because they had some actors in it who did a really good job, but I think at the onset, the story was not put together well, and I think it failed there. I think that was the problem. I think with the actors, at least the couple of actors that we have front and center, and the beginnings of a story, something could have been made that could have been actually, if nothing else, kind of a gem. Smaller.
I like what you said about. Well, I love your analysis that at the heart here, it's a really good thought, actually. Look, strip everything else. You got something here that you could work with, which is this, they got an invasion. One of the leader of the invasion, he falls in love with one of the, depending on how you want to think about it, one of the enemy. He makes a choice, blah, blah, blah. It's not bad, I don't know. I think maybe the problem is it's not nasty enough. For instance, these Martians for some reason really want to be gentlemen. I mean, they're like, we are going to have to steal some women, but we're going to ask your permission first. We hope that's okay with you.
Well,
they go way out of
their way. They do
way.
try to teleport people first.
Yeah,
right.
That's the
Like,
thing.
they're not exactly gentlemen there.
All right, but wait a second. But compare them. Wait one second. Compare them to teenagers from outer space, which not. It's not the same thing, but you did again have a guy from the invading side who falls in love with a girl, and because of it, he betrays, his people. Whatever. But they were nasty. Yeah, they were all really nasty, and they had giant. And this was another Corman picture, I think. But they were pretty nasty. This was that sort of idea again. But these are all, you're right, incredibly polite, and they're Canadians. They're not really aliens. They're Canadians.
Bunch of Martians
Tommy Kirk, but I thought it was. All right, go ahead.
So, I want to back up to the beginning of the movie, because the beginning is when you've got, random people playing tennis and taking showers and doing whatever. And it's like these women just start getting zapped, just disappear. They just vanish. And you don't know how many this has happened to. You see 3 of them. And then you cut to the military saying we're getting these messages, and you're not clear on whether or not these women have been reported missing or what's going on. It's very confusing. And then the Martians finally turn up speaking English over the intercom, and they're saying, hey, we need women, and we tried taking some of yours, but that didn't work out. And then you're like, what? Apparently they
weren't gentlemanly until they had to be. That's the thing.
I guess that's true.
But then they say we need 5 women, and we're going to look for these women who meet our specifications. So how did they decide that now they are going to be picky about who they pick? But before they were just going to zap them, and they could zap as many as they wanted. But now that they can only take the 5 that they can fit on their spaceship, they need to do that. I mean, maybe they're trying to zap back to the planet.
Honestly, this is probably more thought into this plot process than they gave it. I truly think they probably were like, hey, we need a beginning to this movie. Now that we've shot this whole thing, we need a beginning. Let's take a bunch of more or less stock photos of women doing stuff and then have the actresses disappear, and that'll at least give us something to and that's the opening. By the way, I love that the transitions in this movie are this it's basically like the Batman transition where you just
the whip pans. Yeah, they're all whip pans.
What did you call it again? I'm sorry.
Whip pans.
Whip? Like a whip. Okay. Wow.
Yeah, whip pans. Like you whip left, you whip right, you whip.
Wow, that is something. I learned something. Well, one thing that I found really fascinating, and right after this, I want to talk about that speech that Adam brought out that I think is sort of a weird piece of gold in the middle of all of this. I find it fascinating that this movie seems like something that like a smart middle. I mean, no disrespect. I hate it if these guys were alive, but like a smart middle schooler might write. There's a
alive.
But you know what I'm saying? I don't
mean you hate
them
listening.
I hate if these guys are listening. I apologize, but there's a lot of sort of tongue-in-cheek kind of wink-wink. I know how the world works dialogue where they talk about, hey, let's order some more martinis. Oh, we don't get martinis in Texas. Ha 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 ha. There's a lot. Oh, I guess you're the press. Well, I got to be careful around you. There's kind of this sort of hokey. I've seen intelligent and sophisticated things in the world, and so now I'm going to try to put some of them into my script, but I don't really know what they're like, so I'm going to sort of make reference to. Did anybody get that vibe? Do you know what I'm talking about? Where
yeah.
it's like, oh my God, none of it feels quite real or genuinely observed. It feels like the world as observed through watching other movies about the world.
Well, it also bears out in all the dialogue where the aliens talk to each other in, like, the ice house and stuff like that, where it all just comes across as like, what? That, because there's kind of two different movies going on in a way. There's the super schlocky sci-fi with people in wetsuits turned into spacesuits and stuff like that, and then there's the like love story / kind of hard sci-fi part, which we're leading to the speech and stuff like that, and that tries to be grounded. And then there's also all the stock footage, which was done, because they could. But, like, there's kind of the two different, like, parts of this movie, and they don't really jive all that well together.
Well, the aliens are complaining about ties. And you can tell this is something the screenwriter is probably very proud of, that he put in a thing where the guys complain that these ties serve no purpose, and we got rid of
our ties 50 years ago.
And I should point out, by the way, that I wear a suit with no tie all the time. So we are on the same.
You're as cool as a Martian.
Yes. Yes.
I gotta say, those Martians are pretty damn cool. Their suits, the suits that they pick are awesome. I love those suits. But the thing about the tie is what made me think that they actually were humans on Mars first. Like the people were on Mars first, and then they colonized Earth, because that would make sense then if they're 50 years ahead of us, on their technology, on their ties, or whatever, or more than 50 because we're still wearing ties.
Which assumes so much that doesn't make sense. Of course, I mean, the world doesn't. The world couldn't possibly work that way, where 50 years would make the difference. Otherwise, they'd be the same.
No, but not 50. He said they got rid of them 50 years ago, so it could be like a few hundred years. The point is, it's a different reality than ours. It's not. We're not. I'm not saying that Mars has people on it now in our reality. I'm saying that reality.
I know where you're coming from. I'm just saying that like that every line these people throw out lends itself to a million interesting questions, such as, wait a minute, what is Earth, what is Mars like? Is it like one of those planets on Star Trek where they go and everything looks just like Earth, and and they've got
you said that it's super dry and there's very, very little water.
Apparently it has canals.
Yeah, it's got canals. All right, let's actually get to that scene.
And way too many guys, evidently.
And Adam, you thought it was really interesting, or would somebody else like to talk about the planetarium scene? Julia, would you like to explain it, or Adam?
No, I think I start explaining it. Adam, why don't you talk about it?
Well, I mean, if I remember right, it seems like they go, Batgirl and the alien go to. Now I'm just being flippant.
They're on a date. They go on a date.
They go on a date and they end up in the planetarium, and there are a lot of kids that are there, and they're looking at the stars and everything else. And this is a we've seen this sort of thing before, where you've got an alien who's like a human who's looking up at the stars, and we've sort of seen this in other things before. But for some reason, when they start talking about Mars, doesn't the tape break down or something?
Yeah, they're watching. By the way, this is what the planetarium at Fair Park is really like. I mean, I've been in the last
broken
10 years. You get the impression it's near. I have been in the last 10 years. I've taken small children to this exact planetarium, which looks the same. It has not changed since the original Man from U.N.C.L.E. was on the air, and it looks just like it looks in this movie. So you sit there. I'm sure they have all new tape decks and stuff, but in this case, they play a tape about.
I love that the new technology they have is new tape decks.
Yes,
groundbreaking.
But they and by the way, I still recommend the planetarium as a really fun sort of family outing or even a date.
Planetariums in general are actually pretty good. If you're in Los Angeles, you can go to one in Dallas, you can go to New York. Planetariums are still remarkably cool.
Especially in places like Dallas. I grew up in Dallas, and you can't see the stars. So the notion of having a place where you go to and you can see at least a simulacrum of the stars is nice. But in this case, yeah, they start to play it, and the tape breaks down.
And then he begins to sort of talk about Mars, as it is, and then he begins to talk. It sort of dissolves into more like a soliloquy.
Yeah.
A sort of a semi-poignant soliloquy of sort of the plight of this sad planet and its people that, adrift in a cosmic ocean that basically, is now reaching, potentially an end to its life. And what it's doing is it's revealing sort of not just the urgency, I guess, of their mission, but the kind of the sadness. There's an inherent sadness as he's talking about the loss of a people and the loss of a planet in reasonably near future. In the amount of time it would take people to go from the Earth. I mean, obviously, it would take them very long. By 1967, technology to get to Mars. But if people were to go from the Earth to Mars, by the time they would get there, they would find basically an entire, a remnant of a once great civilization that had basically returned to dust. And that actually, if there's anything that you could be said is sort of worth the price of admission, it's probably that scene.
It gives me chills. This is a great. I think it's a wonderful speech. I can't even. It doesn't make any sense to me at all. It's such a weird accident that this movie is not a good movie. Although I enjoy seeing like all the Cotton Bowl footage and everything. So I'm always being entertained constantly because I'm from Dallas. So whatever. It's like a big moving slideshow. But suddenly in the middle of it is this amazing soliloquy. I think you were right to call it that. That I believe Tommy Kirk just literally probably wrote on the back of an envelope the day before the movie was shot.
Yeah, he pulled a Rutger Hauer basically, and he put in this scene, and you know what? It works. And I have to say that as much as I really couldn't stand this movie for a lot of different reasons, I think partly because maybe it was a kind of and maybe this seals the deal. It seems like it was a wasted opportunity. It got made, and it shows, and people got paid, and stuff happened, but. I think in the end, there might have been something else that could have been here in its place. And maybe that's the thing that is probably what's sad about the movie is that there really is this nice piece in it that could have been taken, a lot further. But we have this, and I think this is really good. And so, if there's something to take away from the movie, it probably would be this scene.
Yeah, absolutely. This is absolutely it. In fact, how remember we watched Count Dracula with Christopher Lee, and we said, you could probably lose this entire film and just in the scrapbook of your mind put the one monologue that Christopher Lee has, and then
the fireplace, the sitting room scene, the fireplace.
This is the same thing. I think we're looking at the same thing here.
I agree.
This is a completely forgettable film, but this is a little speech worth keeping, and it's kind of neat to see. Disney heartthrob Tommy Kirk stretching a little, and doing and giving us something, and that was cool. I also thought this was really clever. If think of it, if I were to write a script and say, okay, the romance is going to be between a beautiful biologist or whatever the hell she is. They make up some really astonishingly stupid...
Space geneticist or something.
She's a space geneticist. Actually, and I thought that was really stupid, but if I really thought about it, if this was a Michael Crichton novel or something, she would go, oh yeah, no, I'm the first. I'm taking my genetics and then I'm extrapolating and I'm thinking about theories. Crichton could have made that make some semblance of sense. Be totally...
Sure.
But so if you have that girl, the fact that she's like, where I want to go on a date. I want you to go to the genetics lab with me at the university. That's kind of awesome. There's something sweet about that. So there are some thoughts here, unless they're just completely accidental, which is possible. So anyway, I got one more thing. This ice house that they're in, or the ice factory or so forth, that supposedly they're hiding their flying saucer in. what that actually is, that building, which they appear to have filmed inside the practical building as well as filmed the outside, that building is actually the old pump station at White Rock Lake, when this lake used to be used as a water source. And the pump station was built in 1911. So by this period, it's over half a century old, and so it's covered in moss, and it's no longer used. And by today, it's still there and still abandoned. And it's, I contacted a friend, and I said, hey, I'm watching Mars Needs Women. Look, here's the White Rock Lake pump station, featured prominently in the film. And he's like, man, that's a spooky place. I don't go anywhere near there. And I'm like, yeah, if I were a supervillain, I would definitely be hanging out in the White Rock Lake.
Or if you were an Immortal in Highlander, you'd go there to have your fight.
Yes.
Yeah, that's also
that's
another good place. Wasn't there some in the film Logan's Run? Wasn't there was some water treatment facility that had, or some sort of water? Water in Dallas.
I think
they used a location.
I thought they used the airport.
It was a water plant or something that had steps on water, but they shot it there. It seemed that
was the Fort Worth Water Gardens, if I recall, which is very large, and it still looks exactly like that. By the way, if you want to go and walk or pretend you're in Logan's Run, and or if you really wanted to blow people's minds, you just put on the Sandman outfits and just chase one another around.
Yeah, I'm looking at the film. Yeah, I'm looking on the IMDb. It says Fort Worth Water Gardens, Dallas Market Center, Burton Park Building in Dallas. But it's always Dallas.
The Market Center was the inside of the whole building, and the place where they float towards the ceiling, and it's renew, and then they blow up. That was okay. It was like a discotheque, if I recall. That place isn't there. It's not there anymore.
Well, they shot the rest
of
in the Bonaventure Hotel.
The Oz Club.
Yes. All right, so, I wonder, we've got to find a film that's shot entirely in Austin in the way that this movie was shot. So anyway,
horror movie?
we have been going for a while.
Horror movie.
Yeah, anything slightly genre, I can find a way to weasel it in here. Actually, if you want something similar to that, the Giant Gila Monster is a perfectly legitimate horror film. And that's filmed in East Texas, if I recall.
But but I'd almost rather do the MST version. But I know you said that we can't really comment on somebody else commenting on movies.
We couldn't do MST3K. That would be bizarre because we'd be commenting on the commentary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Still though.
Other good shots in this film. If you're from Texas, I don't know. It's more interesting because when the girl is coming out and walking past the big sculpture, because the Martians pick a bunch of women to stalk in more and less creepy ways. They stalk a stewardess, a homecoming queen, a stripper, an art student, and a scientist. The art student is actually walking out of the SMU Meadows School of Arts,
this is where my sister went to grad school.
Yeah, beautiful. It's a beautiful building. I mean,
and she successfully avoided being stalked by Martians, which kudos. Kudos to her.
I'm not so sure that her husband is not a Martian, but if he is, he stayed here. So that's was nice of him.
Athens strip club is really an Athens strip club. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Joy.
Yeah, no, I thought that the Martian guys were really cute, so I enjoyed them personally.
So they really didn't need to abduct women if they just got suits. Really nice suits because they had great taste. They were pretty handsome. They just hung out. They would just pick up women.
For volunteers. I really don't think they would have had a hard time getting some of these women to go with them. Like in the planetarium thing, in the planetarium thing, there's saying, hey, people will get to go, they don't get to go to Mars or whatever. I think there's plenty of women who are sick of Earth guys and would be yeah, totally, or can't find the right guy or whatever. So sure, I'll go a place where I have 100 to 1 chance of getting a good guy.
I was really hoping Yvonne Craig was going to go with Tommy Kirk. For the love of God. I mean, she's a freaking space geneticist. She could have gone to Mars and probably solved their chromosomal disorder.
Exactly.
That would have actually
that would have been a better
ending. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it wouldn't even cost anymore. All she has to do is get on the damn spaceship. They're all climbing through a little portal. We don't see the inside of the spaceship. She could have climbed in. It's as simple as that.
Right. He gets shot in the end, right?
No, nobody gets shot. Nobody dies.
But somebody get shot? Because I remember seeing a guy comes in.
They get shot.
There's a shot heard off screen.
Astonishingly, nobody dies. They get shot.
And they all. Oh, I see. And they all get back in the thing, and she walks out alone.
Yes, and they all take off, and they don't even blow up. I was thinking that was.
I love the line where the guy goes, where one of the Martians goes, they'll be fine. They're just mildly sedated. They'll wake up in a few minutes. Of the girls that are on the gurneys.
Yeah.
You know, so he, again, terribly polite while they're being shot at by the military. He says to Yvonne Craig, "They'll be fine, just sedated, and then gets in the hatch." That was awfully nice.
Yeah, it's very strange. I wonder if it's because of it's Texas nature. If this has something to do with just this. I don't know. I don't know if if Larry Buchanan for some reason is some kind of extraordinary polite schlockmeister. That just doesn't make sense. So I couldn't tell if there was some bit of action that I had just sort of missed at the end, where I heard a shot and it was a little bit dark. And I thought, well, maybe somebody got shot. I don't know, but it seems like nothing really happened. So that's
Jason, I'm looking at.
That's the. That's the story of the movie, actually.
And by the way, he is a schlockmeister. Larry Buchanan made, the Eye Creatures, which is a much more.
Well, Eye Creatures is actually a better movie.
Oh yes, absolutely. And also, It's Alive, which
from the 70s. With the baby.
No,
creatures?
It's not the one about the baby. That would be awesome.
Oh.
So who knows? Although, I guess Tommy Kirk is in that, so I guess Tommy Kirk became Larry Buchanan's muse.
So, Jason, I'm looking at a list of movies that are supposedly filmed in Austin, and Texas Chainsaw Massacre is on the list.
Oh, of course.
Sure.
And then also, oh God, I just lost it. Something called Planet Terror. According to this, Piranha is filmed in San Marcos, which I was like, okay, that's interesting.
Planet Terror is filmed in San Marcos? Wow, okay.
Piranha, yeah. And then it said the attack
with
of
Ray
Walston. The Bat Monsters.
The what?
The attack of the Bat Monsters.
Okay.
So it looks like we've got several options.
Isn't Planet Terror the one where Aaron, Joni from Happy Days gets destroyed by like a tentacle monster?
Wait, is it Planet Terror or Planet Terror?
Planet Terror is in the Grindhouse.
Oh,
yeah. In the Grindhouse movie.
I'm thinking of
Planet Terror. Just Planet Terror.
Okay, yeah, you're thinking Planet of
not
Terror.
Not Erin Moran.
Or Galaxy of Terror.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of Galaxy of Terror, and I apologize.
Yeah.
Planet Terror. No, Planet Terror actually has Bruce Willis in it, so apparently that is a significant.
Yeah.
Rose McGowan.
Right. That's the right. That's the Rose McGowan.
Yeah.
That's the Rodriguez one. Yeah.
Well, I mean, you just name a Rodriguez horror thing or remotely related
or
to
anything Rodriguez.
You can do Austin. I mean, it's not that hard.
Okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, we should wrap this up. I'd love to get your final thoughts to the extent that anybody has any. And I think I apologize if we've been a little disorganized in discussing this film. It could be that it has just blown all of our minds.
The film itself is very organized and professional.
Right. Okay. So
in the way that a spreadsheet is.
Yes. It all depends on the spreadsheet. All right. Adam, final thoughts. And I don't know. I don't even know if you could ask, would you recommend this film? But anyway, your final thoughts on Mars Needs Women.
Look, I don't know if I would recommend this movie either. But it did get made, which is, I think, an astounding feat in itself. I think if you're from Dallas or Texas, or you want to look into the snowy globe of the past of Dallas, and look at places that you might know, I think that this is probably an amazing time capsule for that. But the thing that I would recommend is if you could fast forward, or if you have other things to do, have it on. Wait till you get to the planetarium scene, and then give it some attention, and follow the performances of Tommy Kirk and Yvonne Craig. And they really put in earnest, pretty good performances. It's earnest performances. And then I would turn it off there, and I would turn on Earth Girls Are Easy and watch a better picture.
I picture us. We just put what when in the movie that happens, and then you can set your alarm clock, and you can be lulled into sleep, and you can wake up and watch that speech, and then if you want to, you can take another nap, or you can get up and like clean your house or do something that requires minimal effort as you're lulled into like kind of a soporific sleep by the rest of the movie.
I don't know about cleaning house.
Or you might, the thing is, if you go to sleep, you'll wake up subliminally wanting to join the Air Force or the NASA unit of the whatever.
Yeah.
Hey,
well, the problem is if you subliminally decide to join the Air Force, you could do that. But if you subliminally want to join the whatever that NASA department was, you're screwed because there is no.
Yeah, it doesn't exist yet. So that's what I got for this movie.
Excellent. Tony, final thoughts? Mars Needs Women.
Really good to go to sleep to. Everybody's really trying hard, and that's cool. There's better schlocky movies for sure. That speech is really good, and that's why it's just weird because you're like, wow. And again, the kids all love it too, even though it's kind of like you expect. I think in reality the kids are probably like, whoa, did something just get real? Like, I don't know why that weird guy was going off that way. But the kids really, really enjoy the speech when he's talking to them. Because he just tells the planetarium guy, like, no, I got this. And then he gives this awesome thing. And, there's parts that are really kind of cool. It just doesn't. It's another one of those movies that just doesn't quite gel, even though it's very earnest in what it's trying to do with a very iconic title. So,
yes,
there's that.
Julia, final thoughts? Mars Needs Women.
Well, I really feel bad that Mars doesn't get the women that it needs, because I think that, as a civilization, they're doomed now. Actually, I'm wondering if there's a sequel that was intended to be made where they actually do get the women somehow. I don't know. But anyway, it is,
how Mars got its groove back?
Yeah, exactly. Mars gets women.
They get the drugs, and then they get the money, and then
It's great.
I love it. Yeah, we should totally write these sequels. But no, I think if you watch the film, if you watch the picture, no, it's not a qualified picture. If you watch the movie, then watch it as if you are a robot. Maybe put on a gumball dispenser over your head or something, and a gumball machine bowl, but don't asphyxiate. And watch the movie and make jokes, and then you'll amuse yourself, even if you don't amuse your husband or your child. But you'll amuse yourself, and that's a fun way to do it. But I did enjoy the suits. I like the suits.
Excellent. I'm telling you, that red suit that the one Martian wears, I think he's the one who goes to Love Field and wanders around Love Field stalking the stewardess.
2 days. Like everybody else has gotten all this done with making progress with these girls, and that guy has just been stalking one flight attendant
Kirk has a girlfriend. Full-on girlfriend. She's taken him to her father's lab at the university. This one guy, he's just wandering around the airport following stewardesses.
Again, Mars is crumbling. So maybe 1 in 100 is a woman, but 1 in every 3 is like this guy.
Yes.
So it's like pandas. Nothing's really helped. They eat the worst things. They aren't very good at mating. Maybe Mars is just really kind of a panda colony of, oh man, maybe Mars just wasn't supposed to be.
Yeah. All right. So I don't have any other final thoughts other than if I love the way Adam put it, that this is a snow globe into Dallas in 1966. If you want a good look at what buildings and people's clothing and stock footage you could get your hands on looked like in 1966, this is definitely it. If you're a big Baylor fan and you want to see Baylor University in the Cotton Bowl in 1966, here is your chance. So if you went to SMU, definitely watch this movie. So,
well, at least that one scene. Again, you can fast forward to that one part.
Yeah. So, yes, I really appreciate you guys suffering through this movie with me because I feel so privileged that and I'm being completely sincere, that there's no other conceivable way I could make 3 other people watch Mars Meets Women if we want.
Well, now I understand. I understand why you've done this, because of Yvonne Craig. It wasn't just sort of, I didn't understand it. The assignment came in and it was like, yes, we will watch this, and
although
like,
Mission Impossible usually, I guess, it did self-destruct on us. We were a lot closer than they usually are whenever the bomb goes off. So
it was about 60 seconds. It was a
very slow bomb.
Yeah,
full of.
It was a very 90-minute bomb. Yeah.
So okay, we should do our endorsements. If there's anything at all that you recommend that you've been watching or listening to or what have you. So Adam, what about you? I know you've been traveling, but is there anything that you'd like to share that you recommend?
Yeah, I've been watching. I think it's season 3 of Ray Donovan. Ray Donovan, good show. Continues to be a good show, and
on Showtime,
of course,
I think, right?
on Showtime, no less. And I think the last time we were talking about this, it seems like Hannibal wrapped up.
Mm-hmm.
So I know it's been canceled, but if you haven't seen it, it's definitely a series worth watching. And it has a very, very interesting ending. So still kind of a remarkable series. I don't know whether you guys had seen much of it or any of it.
I have never seen a single episode of Hannibal. I know I should.
The first two seasons I watched on, the first 2, I guess, were on Amazon, I think. And then they want you to pay for the third one, and I haven't done that yet. But I was surprised how graphic it is, and people were like, "Oh yeah, it's on NBC." I don't know how that happened.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing.
Gross. I mean, it's like I've seen a lot of gore, and there's a lot of stuff that gives me the heebie-jeebies in that show, to the point where I'm like, "Oh, I don't know, man." But it's done really, really well.
It's a very stylistic show. It's very
very stylistic. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the way that it's a Brian Fuller show. So I mean,
but it's
the
gross.
way that I mean that stuff is there, but it's definitely if you put that in contrast with I don't know, Dexter, which I don't know if you can actually put those things in the same category exactly, but you have an eminently watchable main character who you already know is or is going to be a serial killer, and then you're watching everything sort of unfold around him, and it's but it's so highly stylized and so graphic in a bunch of different ways. And then you've got I think what's so interesting is you've got there are moments of gore, but then moments of artistic composition, and these two things juxtapose in a very peculiar way, which, like Hannibal Lecter himself, you find yourself attracted to him and to his sort of style and his eminent watchability, but also he has tremendous darkness as well, and it's sort of this thing of constantly being attracted and repelled, and that sort of the magnetic field that's generated there is sort of interesting. It's the electricity of the show, and I think that's interesting.
CSI was like really, or I haven't watched it lately, but it's always been really graphic and horror. Even though it's not the same thing because it's not the one character that you're talking about, but there's so much gore in that show.
What I find really strange is that it's like we're half French at this point, because we have the gore. You can have like somebody on the operating table, and you can have their leg flayed open, and you can look.
But God forbid you should see a nipple.
But nipples have to be covered, and that blows my mind. We can see the inside of somebody's leg, but we can't see pubic hair, which just is incredible to me that this is where we've landed. Although, I mean, give us time. Whereas if you go to, if you like in France or whatever, it just doesn't exist. Everything, there's basically things are just divided up more or less by time of day. And so more adult stuff just kind of goes a little bit later in the evening.
Right, the watershed.
Yeah. So, right.
Hey, it's Tony's turn.
Yes, Tony. I'm sorry. I was trying to.
Did you start?
So,
oh yeah. I'm trying to think. I've been so busy trying to get ready. I'm going to definitely endorse Fantastic Fest, which I'll be at for the next week, starting Thursday. I don't know if there's any people who listen to the show who are in Austin or going to be coming to Austin for Fantastic Fest. Please say hey if you do, and we'll geek out, and maybe we'll go to the same horror movies there. My track tends to be a little less horror and more like crime dramas and any kung fu movie I can possibly see, any action movie like that. And they're going to do repertory screenings of like some Shaw Brothers stuff and everything. My friend Kayla has a book about Satanic Panic, which I think it's maybe called Satanic Panic. I have to look again. But she's doing a thing, and she's showing Evil Speak, and she's going to be selling her book about the Satanic Panic, which if anybody grew up in the 80s,
that's a wonderful
when we talked about House of the Devil and many movies who talked about that era. So her book will be out. She has a company, I guess, or she goes through something called Spectacular. I think so, and lots of people have done essays, and Spectacular Optical is the publishing arm that she's going through. So anyway, and she was a long-time programmer at the Draft House. So and now she's doing her own thing and writing books and stuff like that. So yeah, so that's going to happen at Fantastic Fest. So I hope to see people there. And when I'm not doing that, I have been listening to the new Iron Maiden album, which sounds like Iron Maiden. And there's an 18-minute song about an airship, so there's definitely a return to form. If I was in a steampunk band, I would feel like I need to up my game because they brought it again. Like, here's the thing. So, yeah, so it's good.
Very, very cool. And, yeah, that Satanic Panic book, Kayla Janice, she wrote the book about, what's the bizarre film with Sam Neill where...
Oh, well, she wrote about possession, but the book she wrote was kind of sort of partially autobiographical, if not more than partially, House of Psychotic Women.
Yes.
And she also wrote a thing about like after-school specials and stuff.
Yeah.
So,
no,
but this new one about the Satanic Panic is...
that sounds fantastic. That'd be a wonderful thing to cover. Yeah, very cool. Julia, do you have anything that you want to endorse?
Well, I've endorsed it before, but I'll endorse it again. Doctor Who is back, and looks to be a really fun season because we're off with a bang with the Planet of the Daleks. So if you have ever watched Doctor Who, for sure, catch up if you didn't watch this last weekend and watch the rest of the new episodes. And if you have not watched it, then maybe watch last season first and then watch this new one, because I think you'll be lost if you just dive into the first episode of the new season.
Yeah, I'm a little lost. So you're saying pick up the last season first before you go into this one? With Peter, what's his name?
Peter Capaldi.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. For me, so I actually got a Roku, after Tony's been talking about it for many years, I got a Roku device just like a month ago. So I'm not going to endorse the Roku because, although definitely I would, but the great thing about it is, as a movie lover, there's just so many channels just playing different random films all the time. So if I got to get something bigger game, like Mars Needs Women, Amazon had it for a $3 rental. But a lot of stuff is just, free, especially like public domain stuff. So that's
yeah, there's dude, I need to get to you all the Shout Factory TV is on it. They have their channel.
Well, that was going to be my endorsement, is Shout Factory TV, which is okay, so Shout Factory puts out DVD sets. They spend a lot of time curating really neat collections, and they have all the MST3K stuff seems to belong to them, and they put a lot of it for free onto the Shout Factory TV channel on Roku. So in other words, get yourself a Roku device, and for free you can download Shout Factory TV and just watch episodes of MST3K all the time. That's pretty awesome. And for me, I'm a huge Route 66 fan. That's probably my favorite television show. I have a mug for it that commemorates that I love Route 66. and they have all the episodes of Route 66 on Shout Factory TV.
Yeah,
so,
Time Tunnel is up there. Ultraman.
Oh, yeah.
Up there, like Ultraman and Ultra Q.
Yes.
I don't know
Ultra
if you
Q,
watched
which
that
is
episode.
the weird X-Files-y black and white progenitor of Ultraman that Tony turned me on to. Yeah. And
there's lots of stuff. Oh, there's a bunch of Django movies, which I watched part of one last night. But I need to get you all the channels that are cool, because there's one something vid, and it's because I've been pulling late hours, I can't remember. There's one channel where if you go there, they have a lot of stuff. But if you go past it and you don't use the skip button, where you skip like 5 ahead or whatever, and you just skip one at a time, they have like these deep cut, weird sci-fi, weird horror things. And I need to find out, or need to remember which channel that is and how to get there. But I'll tell you how to dig into that. But it's like, one of these channels where you can rent it for 99 cents or you can watch whatever. But if you just keep pushing the forward button in their horror and sci-fi section, you just get to this weird, was previously VHS only area, and it's amazing. So, yeah.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah, and so I appreciate that. And, yeah, totally. Basically, you can spend a lot of time just sort of surfing stuff. I've come across some of the strangest things. I've watched episodes of what's the early Twilight Zone that Matt.
Oh, One Step Beyond. One Step Beyond.
Yes.
Yeah.
It just and Lights Out. Who knew that Lights Out had a TV series?
Right. My dad worked on it actually. So
oh my God! Really? Wow. Yeah. So I watched a couple episodes of Lights Out on yet another channel of horror that's on the Roku box, because they have like 2 seasons of Lights Out on it. Neat stuff.
Yeah, he worked on that and Tales from Tomorrow and things like that. Did you like Honey West as much as you like Route 66, Jason?
I have yet to experience Honey West, so I will check that. Did he work on Honey West?
No, that wasn't his.
But I will definitely check it out. So anyway, that's my endorsement. I have one more, and it's not really an endorsement; it's just an announcement, and that's that Tony and Joya and Drew and I will all be doing a live podcast.
And Jamie's here.
And Jamie, that's right.
Yep.
Yes. I apologize. Well, I'll be doing a live podcast at the Colorado Horror Con on Halloween weekend. So it's
on Halloween proper. Halloween Day.
It's going to be on Halloween Day. Yeah, but the con is on Halloween weekend. It's in Denver, Colorado, and so you should come out. We're going to be discussing. I'll tell you right now. We're going to be discussing Nightmare on Elm Street. And
nice.
So it will be super cool. It'll be our first ever live thing, and we need people to be in the audience so they can ask us questions, because I think that would be way more fun than if we just blather on for all the time. Although we're happy doing that as well.
I was going to say, I think we're pretty good at
then we got
using up immense amounts of time just to talk about nothing.
I don't think anybody's ever discussed Mars Needs Women as much as we actually discussed it tonight. So,
including the people who made it, probably.
It's very possible. So, okay. Thank you very much, everybody. Adam, thank you for joining us. Tony, welcome back. And Joya, as always, you're on the other side of the door that I'm standing next to right now. So, hello. If you have questions for us, come to our Facebook page. We want to hear from you. We will totally engage with you. If you have friends who you think would like the show and haven't listened to us, tell them to start listening to the show, because we're about to start a Wes Craven retrospective, and to listen to our back episodes and everything. And if you're in the Colorado area, come on out and meet us on Saturday, Halloween. So, thanks everyone. Have a fantastic week, and I will talk to you guys next week. Bye.
Later.
Bye.